June 28, 1914. Sarajevo pulses with the heat of a Balkan summer. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, sits beside his wife Sophie in an open-top Graf and Stift automobile, waving to crowds lining the Appel Quay. The motorcade veers unexpectedly onto Franz Joseph Street. A wrong turn, the driver hesitates. From the shadows of a corner cafe steps a gaunt 19-year-old, Gavrilo Princip, pistol in hand. Two shots crack the air. One pierces the Archduke's jugular, the other strikes Sophie in the abdomen. Blood stains their formal attire as the car races to the governor's residence. "Sophie, Sophie, don't die. Live for our children," Franz Ferdinand whispers, his voice fading. Within minutes, both are dead. What chain of events led to this fatal detour, and how did it unleash the deadliest conflict the world had ever seen? In the early 20th century, Europe resembled a tightly wound spring, coiled by decades of rivalry and resentment. The continent's great powers, Britain, France, Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, had forged alliances that promised mutual defense but bred suspicion. By 1907, the Triple Entente linked Britain, France, and Russia, a counterweight to the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed in 1882. These pacts, intended to preserve a balance of power, instead created a domino effect where a local dispute could drag in empires spanning continents. To understand this fully, we must delve into the roots of these alliances. The unification of Germany in 1871 under Otto von Bismarck disrupted the long-standing European order. Bismarck, a master diplomat, sought to isolate France after the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871, which had seen France cede Alsace-Lorraine and pay hefty reparations. He forged the dual alliance with Austria-Hungary in 1879, expanded to the Triple Alliance with Italy in 1882. This was designed to prevent a two-front war for Germany, but it also sowed seeds of encirclement paranoia in Berlin as France and Russia drew closer. Meanwhile, Britain, long adhering to splendid isolation, grew wary of Germany's naval ambitions. The naval laws of 1898 and 1900 under Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz aimed to challenge British sea supremacy, leading to the dreadnought arms race. By 1912, Britain had 29 dreadnoughts and battlecruisers to Germany's 17, but the psychological impact was profound. This pushed Britain toward the Entente Cordiale with France in 1904, settling colonial disputes, and the Anglo-Russian Convention in 1907, resolving issues in Persia, Afghanistan, and Tibet. Nationalism surged as a potent force, particularly in the Balkans, often called Europe's powder keg. The Ottoman Empire, once dominant in the region, was crumbling, dubbed the sick man of Europe, since the mid-19th century. Between 1875 and 1878, uprisings in Bosnia and Herzegovina led to the Congress of Berlin, where Austria-Hungary gained administrative control over these provinces, annexing them outright in 1908. This move infuriated Serbia, a newly independent kingdom since 1878, which dreamed of uniting all South Slavs, Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, and Bosnians into a greater Yugoslav state. The Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913 exemplified this volatility. In the First Balkan War, 1912 to 1913, the Balkan League, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro defeated the Ottomans, nearly extinguishing Ottoman presence in Europe. Serbia gained Kosovo and parts of Macedonia, doubling its territory to 80,000 square kilometers and adding 1.4 million people. The Second Balkan War, 1913, saw Bulgaria turn on its allies over spoils, resulting in further Serbian gains. These wars left 200,000 dead from combat and disease, displacing hundreds of thousands and heightening ethnic tensions. Imperialism fueled the fire, with European powers scrambling for colonies in Africa and Asia. Germany's late entry into this scramble, after unification in 1871, bred resentment toward Britain and France, who controlled vast overseas empires. The Moroccan crises of 1905 and 1911 highlighted this. In 1905, Kaiser Wilhelm II's tenure visit challenged French influence, leading to the Algeciras Conference. In 1911, the gunboat Panther's deployment to Agadir nearly sparked war, resolved only by territorial concessions. Militarism compounded tensions. Naval arms races like Britain's Dreadnought battleship program launched in 1906, prompted Germany to build its own fleet, escalating fears of encirclement. Conscription swelled armies. Germany's standing force reached 800,000 by 1914, Russia's over 1.4 million, France's 800,000, Austria-Hungary's 450,000. Military spending soared. From 1870 to 1914, Europe's total rose from £94 million to £398 million annually. Economic rivalries simmered beneath. Industrial output boomed. Germany's steel production surpassed Britain's by 1914, at 17.6 million tons to 7.8 million. But trade dependencies masked underlying hostilities. The Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913 further destabilized the region. Serbia doubled in size after defeating Ottoman forces, gaining 80,000 square kilometers and a population boost of 1.4 million, heightening Austria-Hungary's anxiety over Slavic unrest within its borders. Social Darwinism and eugenics influenced elite thinking, justifying imperialism and militarism as survival of the fittest. Pan-Germanism, pan-Slavism, and other movements amplified nationalist fervor. In Germany, the Pan-German League advocated expansion. In Russia, Pan-Slavists pushed for Balkan influence. These threads, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, militarism, wove a web of fragility. By June 1914, Europe stood on the brink, needing only a spark. Historians debate if war was inevitable. Some, like Fritz Fischer, argue German aggression made it so, while others, like Christopher Clark in The Sleepwalkers, see a collective failure of diplomacy. The plot began in the shadows of Serbian nationalism. The Black Hand, a secret society founded in 1911 by Serbian military officers including Colonel Dragutin Dimitrijevic, known as APIS, aimed to liberate South Slavs from Austro-Hungarian rule through terrorism and espionage. APIS, a veteran of the 1903 coup that overthrew Serbia's Obrenović dynasty, was ruthless. He once boasted of executing prisoners personally. In early 1914, word reached Belgrade that Archduke Franz Ferdinand would inspect troops in Sarajevo on June 28, Vidovdan, the anniversary of the 1389 Battle of Kosovo, a sacred date in Serbian lore symbolizing resistance to foreign domination. The Black Hand saw this as provocative, especially since Franz Ferdinand advocated trialism, potentially granting Slavs more autonomy and undermining unification dreams. Dimitrijevic recruited young Bosnian Serbs, radicalized by poverty and oppression. Gavrilo Princip, born in 1894 in rural Obljaj to a serf family, had joined Young Bosnia, a revolutionary group advocating Yugoslav unity. Expelled from school for protesting Austrian rule, Princip trained in Belgrade with the Black Hand, learning marksmanship and bomb-making. Joining him were Nedeljko Kabrnovic, a 20-year-old printer with anarchist leanings, and Trifko Grabez, among others, 6 assassins in total, armed with pistols, bombs, and cyanide capsules for suicide if captured. The weapons came from Serbian state arsenals. FN Model 1910 pistols and Serbian-made bombs. Smuggled across the border in late May by Black Hand agents, the group positioned along the Apel-Quay route. Muhamed Mehmed Basic, a carpenter, was first but hesitated. Vaso Kubrilovic, a teacher, and Kvjetko Popovic, a student, also failed to act. Franz Ferdinand arrived by train that morning, undeterred by warnings of unrest. Security was lax. Only 120 policemen for 120,000 people, no troops lining the route. At 10:10 a.m., Kabrnovic hurled a bomb at the Archduke's car. It bounced off and exploded under the following vehicle, injuring officers and bystanders. Kabranovic swallowed cyanide, it failed, and jumped into the Miljacka River, only to be arrested in shallow water. "I am a Serbian hero," he declared at trial. The Archduke, shaken but resolute, proceeded to City Hall for a reception. "Mr. Mayor, I come here on a visit and I get bombs thrown at me. It is outrageous," he reportedly snapped. His blood-stained speech draft bore witness to the chaos. Deciding to visit the wounded at the hospital, the motorcade altered course. But the lead driver, Leopold Lajka, unfamiliar with the change, turned wrongly onto Franz Joseph Street at 10:45 a.m. Princip, despondent after the failed attempt, lingered nearby at Schiller's Delicatessen. Spotting the car stall as the driver corrected, he stepped forward, firing twice from 5 feet away. The first bullet hit Franz Ferdinand in the neck. The second struck Sophie, who had leaned to shield him. "It is nothing," Franz Ferdinand repeated faintly as blood poured from his wound. Princip was subdued by onlookers before he could turn the gun on himself. "I am a Yugoslav nationalist, aiming for the unification of all Yugoslavs, and I do not care what form of state, but it must be freed from Austria," he testified later. Why Sarajevo? Franz Ferdinand's visit was provocative, inspecting maneuvers near the Serbian border, asserting Austrian control. His reforms, like trialism to empower Slavs, threatened nationalists who saw him as a barrier to independence. The Black Hand viewed his death as a catalyst for war, hoping Austria's response would rally Slavs. Dimitrijevic later confessed the plot aimed to provoke conflict. Historians debate the what-ifs. If the bomb hadn't bounced, if the cyanide worked, if the driver turned correctly, could war have been averted? Some argue yes, as no immediate crisis loomed. Others, like A.J.P. Taylor, see war as inevitable due to systemic tensions. This act didn't cause World War I alone, but it ignited the fuse in a volatile system. The assassination's ripples spread swiftly. Austria-Hungary's investigation linked the plot to Serbian officials, though evidence was circumstantial. On July 5, 1914, Germany issued the blank check to Austria-Hungary, promising unconditional support. Kaiser Wilhelm II reportedly said, "Now or never," urging action. Vienna drafted a harsh ultimatum to Serbia on July 23, demanding suppression of anti-Austrian propaganda, dissolution of nationalist groups, and Austrian involvement in the investigation, terms designed for rejection. Serbia, backed by Russia, accepted most but balked at Austrian officials on its soil, replying July 25. Austria declared war July 28, shelling Belgrade the next day. The July crisis unfolded day by day. July 24, Russia warns Austria against aggression. July 25, Serbia mobilizes, Austria breaks relations. July 26, Britain proposes mediation conference, Germany rejects. July 27, France assures Russia of support. Mobilizations followed. Russia partially mobilized July 25 to aid Serbia, fully July 30. Tsar Nicholas II telegraphed Wilhelm, "An ignoble war has been declared on a weak country." Germany demanded Russia stand down. Refused, Germany declared war on Russia August 1, then France August 3. Invading neutral Belgium August 4 triggered Britain's declaration, honoring the 1839 Treaty of London. "The lamps are going out all over Europe," said Sir Edward Grey. The war's toll was staggering. 16 million deaths, including 9 million civilians, 21 million wounded. By country, Germany 2 million military dead, France 1.4 million, Russia 1.8 million, Austria-Hungary 1.1 million, Britain 900,000, Italy 650,000, Ottoman Empire 800,000, Serbia 275,000, proportionally highest at 16% of population. Civilian deaths, 6 to 13 million from famine, disease, genocide. Economic costs reached $337 billion, $1,914. Bankrupting empires, Austria-Hungary's debt soared 600%. Hyperinflation gripped Germany, with the mark falling from 4.2 to 4.2 trillion per dollar by 1923. Four empires collapsed: Austro-Hungarian, German, Ottoman, Russian. Treaties like Versailles, 1919, imposed $33 billion reparations on Germany, fostering resentment. "This is not peace. It is an armistice for 20 years, said Marshal Foch. Long-term, redrawn maps birthed Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Poland. Ottoman carve-up via Sykes-Picot, 1916, created artificial Middle East borders, sowing seeds for conflicts in Iraq, Syria, Palestine. The Balfour Declaration, 1917, promised a Jewish homeland, igniting Arab-Israeli tensions. The war's chaos enabled the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, leading to the Soviet Union and Cold War divides. Spanish flu, spread by troop movements, killed 50 million globally. A single wrong turn amplified into global upheaval, illustrating how minor decisions cascade into catastrophe. Beyond geopolitics, lives intersected tragically. Franz Ferdinand, born 1863 in Graz, was no mere figurehead. Third in line until Rudolf's 1889 suicide and his father's 1896 death, he became heir presumptive. A military man, he advocated naval expansion and trialism, restructuring the empire into German, Magyar, and Slav thirds to quell unrest. His morganatic marriage to Sophie Chotek in 1900, after renouncing his children's succession rights, isolated him at court. Sophie endured snubs as a mere countess. Yet, he was a devoted father to Sophie, Max, and Ernst, dreaming of reforms to preserve the empire. "I live and shall die as a Magyar," he once said, showing his affinity for Hungary. Sophie, born 1868 to a Bohemian noble family, worked as a lady-in-waiting before meeting Franz. Their love defied court protocol. Emperor Franz Joseph reluctantly approved the marriage after intervention from Pope Leo XIII. In Sarajevo, it was their anniversary, hence the joint appearance, usually forbidden by protocol. Princip, conversely, embodied desperation. From a family of 9 with 6 siblings dying young, he suffered tuberculosis and poverty. Motivated by Yugoslavism, not just Serbian nationalism, he sought to end Habsburg oppression. "I am a Yugoslav nationalist, aiming for the unification of all Yugoslavs, and I do not care what form of state, but it must be freed from Austria," he testified. Black Hand members like Dimitrijevic, a 1903 regicide veteran, saw violence as liberation's tool. Kabrinovic, a typesetter, threw the bomb after failing to act earlier. "The political unity of the Yugoslavs was my fundamental idea," he said at trial. "What almost altered fate? The bomb's bounce, the cyanide's failure, the driver's correct turn, history hinged on seconds." If Franz Ferdinand lived, some speculate he might have reformed the empire, averting dissolution and perhaps war. This event's echoes define our world. World War I birthed the Treaty of Versailles, whose humiliations fueled Hitler's rise, and World War II, claiming 70 to 85 million lives. New borders fragmented Europe. Yugoslavia's 1918 creation dissolved in 1990's wars, killing 140,000. Middle Eastern lines from 1916 Sykes-Picot endure in Iraq, Syria instability, ISIS's rise, and Palestinian-Israeli tensions. The Armenian genocide during World War I killed 1.5 million, shaping modern Turkey-Armenia relations. The League of Nations, 1920, foreshadowed the UN, promoting collective security. America's isolationism post-1919 shifted to superpower status after 1945. Today's NATO echoes Entente alliances, while Balkan nationalism persists in Kosovo disputes. In the Middle East, arbitrary borders fuel conflicts like the Iraq War, 2003, and Syrian Civil War, 2011, with over 500,000 dead in Syria alone. In a Sarajevo street, a pistol's report still reverberates, reminding us that the threads of history once pulled unravel empires and redraw destinies. How fragile the peace we inherit. If you learned something, subscribe, like, and comment. Turn on your notifications for more Uncover videos.